Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for joining. We're going to be talking about the components and coming to you with a really short one here actually. Most of the people that are jumping into Grim Dawn for the first time, they're having in my opinion, they're having a hard time grasping and getting used to the components since there's so many of them. And at the same time, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, that kind of depends on if you like them or not. Components are extremely big in Grim Dawn. They're massive when it comes to like optimizing your character, not only defensively, just not just talking about the resistances, but earlier on in the game you can actually face roll the contents if you know how to control the components and if you know what to use where. Um, up to a point that you don't even need to uh, look at the items all that much. Basically, that is just how good the components are in this game, but only in the early game. Later on into the game, it is not only capping the defenses at the same time, you know. But when I say defensive, as I said, like not only resistances but also armor absorption, defensive ability, offensive ability, and at the same time offenses as well. The modifiers that you're working on, maybe some flat damage, maybe some crit damage, maybe even some auras of your liking. Now, in this one, we are going to be trying to talk about basically the stuff that can help, especially the beginners in this game. Um, when it comes to the components, how can you get used to them, pretty much? And I'll also tell you what are few components that you should, in my opinion, look for look for when it comes to like the first 50, 60 levels of the game until stuff gets really really harder. um so the first tip is that, let's say that you're wearing an item that doesn't have a component on it. I want you to pay attention to the left side. Some of the items are highlighting. And another thing is that you don't necessarily need to hover over all the time. You can actually like hold your mouse cursor on it, then press Control on your keyboard. That's going to be hiding the tooltip of the item. So therefore, you will be able to, see the components that are highlighting. So the ones that are highlighting means that I'll be able to, use those components on the pens. That would basically be the same for uh, any other thing. If it was a weapon that we were wearing or holding, if I mouse over it, other components are going to be highlighted. Those components are the ones that I can use. If it was gloves, highlighted. Mind you, it wouldn't work. It's when it's not worn. You need to be using the item for it. So this is one of the tips. Okay, so it is much easier for you to carry all the components when you are playing and hover over it, and look at the highlighted items. See if you can use something. That's his first thing. The second thing is that in Act 1 you save someone, an apprentice. I think it is one of the main story, in fact. Um, so this guy over here is capable of taking out the components or taking out the item. So basically you get to either keep the item or keep the add-on. So that being said, if you consider the early on items quite irrelevant, then that also means that it doesn't necessarily matter like which component you use where or how rare they are. You will be always able to get it back anyway. So even if we like use a really really rare component, an end game component, even on our chest piece or like maybe on our hands, we'll be able to just destroy the item and keep the component regardless. Um, so that's another thing to mention definitely when it comes to the components. You should be using them at all costs. Now, I could mention some of honorable mentions maybe when it comes to the components, especially while leveling. There's the runestone for the helm. Almost every single time I'm using it because it's giving you aether and elemental resistances 12%. I think you could actually like use the runestone at the very beginning of the game, almost like level 10 something, level 24. I lied, my bad. But it is quite early on, so somewhat about like halfway into Act 2, let's say, that you can use this one. The other one is called the Silk Swatch. This is massive, and I would definitely advise you to start using this at the start of Act 2. The Pierce and the Bleed resistance. You can use 3 of these if you would like to. They're applicable on your shoulder, chest, and leg armor, and you can craft them. They are not dropping on the floor, but you can easily craft them at the blacksmith. So it is called Silk Swatch. That is the second honorable mention. The third one is the Antivenom Salve, just like in my belts. It is an early on one as well, and I would definitely try to use as many of them as possible around like Act 3, maybe midway to Act 2, something like that. Yeah, probably midway to Act 2 sounds better. And it is fixing your poison resistance. So this is the third one. Now, we could mention some stuff when it comes to like boots. Obviously, movement speed is one of the better things if you have been watching my leveling videos. That is definitely really easy to take care of. So movement speed is the mark of the traveler, and it is somewhere around there. For the gloves, you can definitely have something like, anti-venom salve, because the anti-venom salve is being able to, put everywhere on, or you could have something like, bleed and vitality resistance, which is quite big. But I would say these three are like my every single character use when it comes to like level 52, level 60, some sort of. So these are the best ones, and I would say these are on a little bit on the second hand, and they're still useful. And these are like just dropping; you don't need to craft. So these two were crafts. Runestone is dropping as well, but if I'm not mistaken, you can craft the runestone as well. When it comes to the weapon, pretty much use anything that is giving you the damage at that point, and then take it off. It doesn't necessarily matter all that much. Instead of running with an empty weapon, it is definitely better to use something instead. So in this case, I was using something called Chipped Claw, which is giving you, if I'm not mistaken, physical damage and physical damage multiplier. It also gives you something called the Slam, which is another ability that you could use. Now, for the last part, when it comes to like accessory, I'm either using the vitality resistance that's coming from Soul Shard. They're extremely common. As you can see, I have 300 of them. You can probably find, a couple of them while you're leveling. And at the same time, you could also use Corpse Dust, which is a little bit less vitality resistance, but more HP. Those are pretty common as well. You could also use something called Mark of Illusions if you would like a little bit of like, elemental damage if you're dealing elemental damage. That's quite offensive at the earlier on, because this is not only for rings but enemies. So that means there's 3 of them at the really early on of the game. 45%, 50% elemental damage multipliers could be big. Could be big. That definitely comes to you. Now, for the last part, I'm going to add this to the end. The relic piece is something that's one of the new players are going without crafting one or finding one. Let's say it is pretty unique for a really long time in this game. Let's call this a component as well, okay? So instead of like going naked or like trying to craft a new relic for yourself, what I do while I'm leveling is that over here, one of the first quests that you take in Act 2 starts. This camp right here. This guy is going to give you a quest, and he will want you to find an elder. This guy right next to me. So it is, as you leave Devil's Crossing, you find the first waypoint at the Arkovian foothills. And the dude over here called Graven, he asks for you to find the elder. The elder is going to be basically found quite easily. The quest is really easy, and when you turn back to him, he will also ask not only if you found the elder, you'll say yes, I found him, but at the same time, if you say that you haven't found a relic, you lie to him. That is the option, because you will have exactly this relic in your bag, and you will be like, no, I didn't find it. You get to keep the relic. That is most of the time is the relic that I end up finding and using in every single character. So like level 50, most likely 60 even, and then craft something really good. You could do the same. You could definitely do the same, but this relic is going to be an incredible damage upgrade for every single one of them because of the mana infusion skill that is being given. If I'm not mistaken, mana infusion doesn't necessarily work for your pets. Well, that's one thing to get. Don't really want to like keep this going for a really long time, but when you press the mana infusion, it gives you 100% all damage, and it also boosts your energy regeneration by quite a lot of margin. And at the early game, 100% all damage is quite a lot. 100% all damage, sometimes for some characters, it's even double damage instantly. So that is incredible relic, especially for the early game. So I would definitely suggest you to lie to this quest, and it is pretty good. What do you lose by lying? A little bit of experience and a little bit of reputation when it comes to the robbers. But I would say it's definitely worth, sacrificing the reputation that you gain with the robberies by taking this relic. When it comes to the strength of your character, I think it's a good trick. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else that I would like to mention when it comes to the components. I really hope that this was useful to some of you. I try to make this as simple as possible, especially for the first people that are joining into Grimdom. I'm aware that like I'm getting a lot of questions when it comes to like optimizing their characters and how it is going with their characters and what they can do to improve. And when I open their Grim tools, when they share the character with me, there's no components on it, and that's completely normal because like it is kind of overwhelming to jump into Grimdawn and get used to components. There's so many of them, but just by simple tricks and knowing a few components, I think the early game is going to be a lot easier for you, and I think that you are going to be getting warmed up by them one by one. I think you will get there. Don't worry. Thanks a lot for watching. Really hope that it was useful. I'll catch you later on.